me and Tete and Riza are going to be talking about Sun, which is one of the adaptations of the Superman mythos. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Riza and Tete's reaction to the movie. And I think Riza's the only one who has actually watched the whole movie, but Tete has actually watched an adaptation of the comic as a movie, and I think there are some minor differences between the animated movie and the cartoon version, like the animated version, but in general, they have a lot of similar, I think.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty very simple. Like there are some minor differences between the movie and the comics, though. But overall, though, the whole storyline, though, from start to finish, is pretty much the same from Volume 1 to Volume 3, which I do recommend, though, because it is a very interesting a very interesting concept of Superman. Instead of being raised in Kansas, United States, he was raised in Ukraine, in Russia during the start of the Cold War, and this is literally start after the end of World War II as well.
Yes, definitely. It is such a fascinating,
right.
such a fascinating juxtaposition, of this concept. Like most people think, you know what I mean. Superman's usually like an American cultural icon. So try to reimagine that and imagine what would it be like if he had, if instead, the space pod had landed in, Ukraine instead of Kansas. What would be the rippling consequences and effects thereof? And, would this political and social order, influence or differentiate this version of Superman from the, mild mannered Clark Kent of Kansas?
Well, the general differentiation of like the time where he's actually raised, but at heart, he's still kind of like the same. It's just that his views and opinions that are very different because again, he's born in a communist nation instead of like a capitalism.
True.
Compared.
Yeah.
But other than that, though, in the comics, there's actually it also makes a lot of call.
Oh, connection problem.
Sorry about that.
Hey, are you back?
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. There was a connection problem.
Yeah, it happened on my end too, but but don't worry, I'm fine. But
Awesome.
The storyline of Red Sun does make a lot of callbacks to Superman's golden age, golden age persona during his heyday, where he's basically all about saving lives, though. But at the same, but the one thing you got to consider, though, he's doing it on the side of Russia instead of the side of the United States, because. And during the time when Joseph Stalin discovered him, to be, basically someone who is basically given with almighty power and might, he basically took him in and basically trying to make him like the gold standard boy to represent Russia.
True.
But which during that time, though, the United States and Russia was basically going at each other for the arms race, though. But now replace the arms race itself with, like, as the comic books it goes to say, the superhuman race. Basically, now everyone is trying to make their own Superman, and a lot of the things that goes on and a lot of things that does happen is you see familiar characters that in the original Superman mythos, like Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, Jimmy Olsen, like they're all still there, but now their roles are like completely different as well, though. Like Lois Lane is married to Lex Luthor, but their marriage is very off, to say the least. Like, like if this was like if it took place in the modern times though, Lois Lane would have divorced him right then and there. But this is during the 1950s where getting a divorce was still a big no-no.
True it was.
Right. I didn't know that about Lois Lane also being in this alternative universe. Actually, we were talking about me and Tete. We were talking about how it seems like Mishka or, this version of Clark, it seems like he doesn't have a love interest, and we assumed that the only kind of love interest he has is Svetlana, right? Who dies in the movie at least.
Lana, or at least Lana Lana in the original comics he was mostly in the original comics and any storyline though, she's always Clark Kent's childhood friend, like even his own childhood sweetheart. Like when you look at his original crush of anything though, you would see basically Lana was always like the first person that would be his childhood crush though. But in this universe though, they still don't get together. Though. And the main difference between the movie and in the comic though is that Lana actually gets a different job. Job though, whereas in the movie, and minor spoilers, is she dies from being inside of one of the concentration camps in Russia.
Oh.
Which in the movie, this is what broke Superman, though, whereas in the comics, it's more of like that people from the inside was like tearing him apart. Like people that are from the people from the inside of the Soviet Union, like his brother, like his half brother. I forgot his name already.
I think Razlov something.
Razlov Vladimir, who was Stalin's illegitimate son, who just took him in.
Yeah, I think he was the head of KGB, I guess.
Yeah, he was he was in charge of the Russia's secret police force, and during that. But even still, like in the even though technically they are brothers, because Stalin basically said, "You're my son and you're my son," but Stalin basically just spoiled Superman, like almost like he is the prodigal son, which would make anyone jealous anyway, though.
True that. I was sort of seeing that in the. I sort of saw that in the Motion Stop comic where, he's actually voicing his he's voicing his discontent and his anger and resentment, and he's also describing too how he killed I guess this version's incarnation of Bruce Wayne, who turns into Batman. So it was more of a your standard Stalinist purge thing where Bruce's parents, which I don't know his name in this Russian version, his parents get killed, like so many people in Stalinist purges. So instead of Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed by random criminals, in the street, his parents are shot right in his own home, and this, and I think Razalov maims this kid, and I mean I guess that's why that kid turns into Soviet Batman.
Yeah, which everyone could basically say that this version of Batman, or at least the one in Red Son, is probably the most dangerous one out of them all.
Out of them all, he is. He's not afraid to take no prisoners, no bars hold. This is a Batman that's truly terrifying and won't even stop at, domestic terrorism to get his point across and his point done.
How about Superman in this universe? Would you guys say that he's also one of the most dangerous versions, or not dangerous?
He is still one of the most dangerous, though. But I would still say the Injustice version of Superman is still the most dangerous one, though, in terms of like not only political power, but also because of how far he has gone.
Definitely, but this version's terrifying.
But as a whole character, though, I still prefer the Red Son Superman, because In the comic, though, you do see a very deep dive into his character, though. Like, even though technically he has done a lot of horrible things, though, because he still views himself like he's still a hero to not only to himself, but also to all the people, though. But even still, even though he still idolizes himself as a hero, though, not everyone sees it that way, though.
That's true. I think a lot of people call him, I mean, how do I say, from what I've seen, certain people call out the regime and what he's basically championing for. Because there's one scene, at least in the animated one I saw, where Lois Lane, I guess she wants to get an interview with him, and I guess it's sort of a clandestine meeting they have, and she actually shows him files that reveal the truth about Stalin's gulags and such, and I guess that's what leads to him finding about Svetlana, and the whole downward spiral from therein, at least in the animated version.
That is true, though. And again, one of the bigger, deeper dives that I kind of do like, though, is basically Superman's perspective, though, of how, even though he's still technically a superhero, though, he's still kind of grounded in reality, though. Like, he feels like he has to do these things, though. Like, he still has to sit. In his view, he has to save the world. He has to save it, or at least put down rebellions when he has to, though, because then now he's basically in charge of the country as the story unfolds, because he's basically the new dictator after he kills Stalin in the movie, though. But in the comics, though, that did not happen.
So what happens to Stalin in the comic? Because I didn't get to that part.
Stalin suffered through a cyanide poisoning, though, which was very similar to how he died in real life.
I see.
More in with reality, so it's not quite the laser blast we got in the movie. Although, even though that was satisfying. I'm sorry.
Which was one of the brutal things I did see in the movie, though, which I had to say a lot of people actually do agree about this, though, because they say it's a better way to go for him than how he dies in real life and how he dies in the comic as well. Because in the comic, it was his own officers that did him in, and Superman was not know about this, but still, they were just gone because they basically said, screw Stalin, screw Stalin, he needs to go. But then they realized, oh God, he's next. And when you have to deal with Superman, that's not a good idea, though. So, and some of them,
farm is already bought. Everyone can go home.
you would think that would be the case, but
exactly.
No,
it's more like sign your final will and leave the country.
So yeah, it seems like Superman in this incarnation is closest to Tete's favorite version of him, which is the Golden Age Superman. So can you guys delineate what makes him so similar to the Golden Age version of him, which is, I believe, the original version, right? From the 30s to the 50s?
Yes.
Yep.
I'll let Ryza go. Yeah.
But it does call back because it does a lot of callbacks, though, because not only in terms of like the story arc, but also because of the art style as well. Like, if you look at the art style in the comics, though, they look very similar to that of the original comics during the 1920s and even the ones in 1930s as well. And there's even some comic page panels, which unfortunately I can't show because the stupid computer is on the fritz. There's actually some callback covers to the original covers of the comics as well, but now they're actually changed differently. Like, one of the original callbacks was Lex Luthor having orange hair, because in the original story, Lex Luthor was a redhead, but then after a little accident with Superman, he lost all of his hair and became bald and became the Lex Luthor that we all know and love. Well, love is pointed at mildly.
I guess the villain that we all know within canon and love or hate. Personally, I like the foil that Luthor poses to Superman in any carnation. Um, I've even liked the recent one in the Snyderverse. I know a lot of people ragged on it, but honestly, seeing Snyder's cut, it was good. And I thought, this Luthor is a ticking time bomb, crazy kid. I know, very different from Golden Age, but anyway, Luthor is interesting opposition because I guess somebody once summed it up that most of the time Superman is a god trying to be a man, while Lex Luthor is a man trying to be a god, essentially.
So it's inversed.
It's inverse, and that's what makes it so interesting and compelling. At least for me. And Rise is right. The art style really does evoke Golden Age, which is, for me, it's peak design because it's just so nice, original, retro. It really gives you that feel of what originally, Clark slash Superman was supposed to be. And I think also the inherent core of that moral compass as well. And that's always been, and also too, I think I think aside from a few things that do happen, from what I saw of different spoilers, it's more focused on the social aspect than, say, one arch nemesis, or a particular arc, or anything taken from whatever came after in and after Silver Age.
Right. Silver Age is more, I guess, more typical, superhero fare, right? So, for example, there's a big supervillain, and it feels more like what you typically think of when you hear the word superhero, right?
Definitely, it's
Pretty
definitely,
much.
yeah, yeah.
Is it a bit
Did
more
it
like
with
Avengers?
No, it was more of like the villain, the whole villain of the week thing. Like one week that it, like
Oh.
one week have to like Superman has to stop like Luthor or even Brainiac or even Darkseid though. That it punches them, saves the day, rescue Lois Lane, that called a day, and that was a nice 20, and that was a nice 10 cents to spend on because comics was cheap that day, cheap back in the day. Or at least
When-
back in the day. I mean, at least in our standards, they look cheap back in the day, but to them, spending 10 cents is like spending like $1.
that's true. And
That's true.
yeah, not too bad. I mean, and you have to think about it. It's such a popular art form of media, and I think, like I said, a lot of questionable comic art, but when you look at different ones that have really surpassed the quality that we expect, it can be very beautiful art form that really expresses the human form and thought and condition in a very beautiful way that I don't think cinema can capture, or any other form of media. I guess this is why a lot of cinematic adaptations fall flat, or they have to take a very different route to get points across. And many times it gets lost in translation pretty badly sometimes.
Which is one of the major problems of the DC cinematic universe, though, because some parts work and some parts do not, though.
That's true. They're flawed works. I mean, I guess for me, I wasn't, I guess, confession time. Originally, I never wanted to see any of them. And the weird thing is, the only reason I went to see them, like the whole trilogy thing, like Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the Snyder Cut of Justice League, was the fact that I had seen The Witcher. I loved Cavell's performance as Geralt, and I thought, I'm going to take a wild chance and see how good these are. And I enjoyed them. They were flawed. They missed out on a lot of original concepts. But I think to try to fit it in for a modern audience that may not embrace the comics or know the comics, I think it did a very good job. Plus, the chemistry with the actors worked well. So I think that's its carrying merits, despite the flaws with its lore and, conveying character. And at times, sometimes the pacing, which can feel a little whiplash, or the reinvention of certain characters, which I thought, worked pretty well if you want to think about creating something for, like I said, a modern audience that isn't as invested in the whole lore and mythos of it all.
That makes sense, right?
Which,
How about
for
yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, which again, this is one of the reasons why there's some parts I do like about the DC cinematic universe, but there's also some things where I don't like about it though, because they expect a lot of people going in already to know a lot about the comics though, which about when you take the aspect ratio though, about 20% do know about the whole comic book aspect though, and only whopping 80% that don't. Like
That's
you got to be a hardcore fan to know which is which.
that's true.
And
That's true.
and if you
Mhm.
don't, then a lot of these things that they're actually showing and even referencing, though, a lot of these are just gonna like go over your head, and you're just gonna be like, "What?"
That's true. I think a lot
Mhm.
of people went what, and I guess that's why sometimes in theatrical cuts they cut out things that explain things a lot more, or at least added more, to me, more characterization nuance. Because I think it was, I like to treat them as sort of a new animal, because it's a lot of things are just so different. It'll give you whiplash. Like, for example, um, the personalities of Clark and Lois are so different. It just literally gave me whiplash, and I wasn't going to embrace it at first, but then the more I saw it, the more I thought, well, I think it's beautifully done. It's very different from any canon. It's, definitely the opposite of Golden Age. It's very different than anything we encountered in Silver or Modern Age. But to me, the chemistry worked beautiful between the actors, and I was satisfied with that. I thought, well, I'm just going to consider this as a very strange, bizarre AU that really works, and I think captures the quintessential, you know, bond. Even if it's
Mhm.
different, it's still quintessential. But I think, but when you think about it on the larger scale, with all the different layers and compositions and everything, each character and their mythos and how that ties in, it's a cracked pillar. It's a flawed masterpiece. It has huge flaws, but there are things, like you said, there are parts that do work, and I think we just, for me, I just embrace it, because at least it's something that has added to the mythos rather than detract it. Now that people have been able to see like director's cuts and not deal with the really bad theatrical cuts.
Mhm.
The only one that I would consider like the actual best one, and I still stand by it though because I still haven't seen all the DC cinematic universe though, and it's the original one, and that's the Wonder Woman movie by Gal Gadot.
I love that
And
movie.
I'm not,
So good.
2017. Yeah.
So good. I went
yeah,
to the movie theaters and saw that movie. It was good. Perfect.
yeah,
Mhm.
That was handled nicely. Not gonna lie.
yeah.
Not gonna lie. That was handled very nicely. Just building up the lore and the mythos, and also involving a bit of history in it. That was handled so nicely. I mean, that's probably their best one, and I just feel like nothing will match up to that. Everything else is just kind of on shaky ground. But I did enjoy the I did kind of enjoy, like, what people call the trilogy. Um, probably out of all of them, probably enjoying Batman versus Superman probably more than the other two. Probably.
Really? I thought you
Made
liked Man of Steel the most.
Well, the problem with Man of Steel is that I did enjoy it a lot. The only problem was, number one was pacing, number one was twisting the plot around, and number two, I wanted a little bit of more warmth from Clark, because he was so inundated with angst and,
Mm.
morosity, and I wanted more, just a little bit more, you know, cheer, a little bit more warmth. I mean, there were moments like that, but so much of it was angsting, and made me think, why did that come to be? And I thought, well, I think it's because the world that, it's like, Superman stands for optimism and hope. I mean, honestly, kind of an icon of hope punk, if you will. But
Mhm.
the world has turned against that. And what do you do when a world forces you not to be that anymore? You become uh, inundated in existential angst and doubt and existentialism, and it will take a darker, more morose tone, um, and desaturated, if you will. Um, but I mean, I will say, like, after Batman versus Superman, I do love Man of Steel, because at the end, at the 11th hour, if you will, it all comes together very neatly. It's just the rest from beginning and everything. Just the pacing was just so winding and winding and winding. And
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen just inject a little bit more cheer and a little bit more pizzazz. Give us what makes Clark sparkle like a scintillating firework. Um, and I did enjoy Batman versus Superman because we saw a lot of anger and a lot of rage and doubt, and then a bit of a sort of a sad conclusion of I don't know, just the very wonderful theme of self sacrifice. And I guess Justice League gave us this thing of rebirth, and I think it was handled very nicely in Snyder Cut. I'm not Whedon's version. There were so many problems with it. Some of the dialogue was a little bit better, but some of it did feel like it was trying to be too much Marvel, which no, it does not work. At least in my opinion. That's just my humble 2 cents.
I mean, you're not that wrong though, because basically with the original Sweeney version of Justice League though, because they're basically trying to catch up with Marvel with their cinematic universe, and they're trying to catch up with the Avengers though. But honestly, the main difference between with Avengers and Justice League though is that with Marvel they actually had time to actually build up all of these characters though,
True.
and how they reference each other and how they're all going to cross over to each other though. While here they kind of don't. They kind of just rushed everything in. They did make sure that they kind of just rushed everything and make sure that like all of it would make still like all of it would make sense anyway. But again, that's kind of the problem of it though. Like they're just rushing a bit while not letting us get to know these characters, having us a deep dive on them and understanding who they are and how and why we should care about them though. That's honestly the big problem that I still see with DC is that they're still kind of rushing things.
I feel the same way too. I especially felt that in Justice League. I felt whiplash at every moment, even in the Snyder Cut, which is like 4.5 hours, and it felt very epic. I still feel if you didn't have quite a healthy dose of comic knowledge, you were just getting whiplashed right and left. And sometimes the transitions of scenes weren't all that um, gradual or gentle. Like first we have one scene of this happening, and then this happens, and then you're trying to keep up, and it becomes confusing. I mean, I feel like the conclusion was okay and satisfying. um and I enjoyed it. I was glad for the whole rebirth thing, and I did love in the Snyder cut the black and silver suit, which is my favorite because I feel it's more symbolic, and it kind of harkens back to uh the 1992 comic where there is that rebirth, and we do get the black and silver suit, minus though the weird 90s mullet, which I mean I don't mind, but it wouldn't work in today. It would not work.
Yeah, it would not work though because the last thing because it will not work. Like the original comic of how Superman and Doomsday go down each other though, it would not work in like in the cinematic universe. Like it just would not.
No, it wouldn't. As much as it would have been fun to see Val in a mullet.
To go back to Red Sun, how do you guys find the cinematic universe compared to the Red Sun? Do you think the Red Sun is easier to get into for people who don't have comic knowledge?
Yes, for me yes it does though. Like you're just gonna watch it like one of those what if storylines that you're gonna and you just want to like sit down and just watch and see for what it is though because like I said, it does touch upon a lot of aspect of the comics though, but it never just like fully says it though. Like it's pretty much a good beginning, middle, and end though. Like it's basically just a what if storyline for Superman and everything else, and for what it is.
True, it's more of a it's very condensed, and I think it removed a lot of elements that are very telling of a lot of things, and more of the, I guess, political nuances as well from what I've seen. Because it does give you this, the comic itself does give you this dread of, you know, Stalinist, extremist, totalitarian regimes, and the nuances that go on with that. The inner terror of it all, Meanwhile, with Red Sun, the animated version, I guess it's more focused on the inner downward spiral of Soviet Superman himself. And like I said, I think it's easier for newcomers to digest that, because it's A, B, and C. But I think it does a very good job. I mean, honestly, out of all the things I've seen animated by DC, I really like the style, because some of the animated stuff, while the style is relatively good and pretty solid, I've never really liked much of any of Superman's designs. But in this one, I thought it was done nicely, because, like, again, like Riza pointed out, it's harkening to Golden Age. I mean, I know it looks kind of like the standard animation style, but it's still, going to Golden Age. And I think I'll stand by it that I think I find Red Sun Superman maybe the most attractive animated Superman, right after the Fleischer animated serials of the 40s.
Hmm.
Yeah, I kind of definitely agree to that though. And again, I really do like this aspect of it, because the film, and even though you guys haven't already seen it though, you do see like a deep dive into Clark's character though, or as you call him, Mishka or Michael, if I'm reading the translation correctly though, like it's roughly translated.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, because it basically translates it, because it basically shows it both aspects of the original comic though, but also taking some new twists on it though, like seeing the horrors that Lex Luthor is like. One of the things that we see is meeting Bizarro in this universe, which I'm not sure you guys seen it though, but
Superior Man, right?
yeah, or at least he's called Superior Man in this version though. But
Yeah, that was pretty terrifying what happens to him. Like, because I did see that fight between, Soviet, Red Sun, well, Superman, we'll call him, and Superior Man. That was pretty terrifying what happens to Superior Man. I feel like it's an allegorical warning for not only human experimentation, but I don't know, I guess the horrors of messing around with the radiation stuff.
Hmm.
pretty much because because if you look both in the film and even in the comic of Red Sun, though, Luthor does not hold anything back, because boy is he pretty much he is pretty much a huge douche, because because he's very much obsessed with like taking down Superman no matter what.
And no matter what cost, and then that's how Luther's always been. Um, and Yeah, so that was pretty terrifying. I didn't see it in the comic yet, but the animated version was pretty quite a punch. Like, yeah, we should put that as a PG-13 rating.
But like I said, this is one of the big major difference between the comic and the film. And in the comic version, though, but in the comic version, Superior Man or Bizarro, in the comic, he's basically just that, a manufactured version, and he looks basically as he does in the original comic, but he's still like sculpted to still look like Clark in the but unlike how he dies in the film, which is so horrifying to see. Honestly, like even though it's a PG-13 film, that it was so horrifying to see him just melting away just like that. Like, ugh.
It was terrifying.
Well, while in the comic version, where he basically still stopped the Superman, but he also saved a lot of people though, because one of the things they also tried to do though was basically have him fight on his home turf near a nuclear power plant, and instead of like, and when one of the radiation reactors were about to go off, Superman was about to do it though, but then Bizarro literally froze him and then took the reactor himself and actually sacrificed himself to take it out.
That's actually pretty nice. Like, I mean, what I don't want to say like nice, like, oh, I'm glad that happened, but I mean, I think that was more of a deep character thing for Superior Man slash Bizarro than what we saw in the. I mean, because like in the film, it was very condensed and like, and it kind of simplified him to like this irritating fighting machine. But this one that you've described, I mean, it almost seems like a schism, a duality in a way, a duality of the other half gaining the original desires of what you know what I mean, of that kind of significance.
It pretty much shows that even though Bizarro was basically just like an experimentation, he still wants to be like the ideal superhero, though. Or at least on the American side, because even though Clark was could have done something about it as well, though he kind of took a hit about it, though, not like emotionally, but more of like his image, like this is gonna make me look bad because I didn't do that. But at the same time, though, Clark was still going on this rampage. He was still like taking over as like the new dictator of Russia and going through his totalitarianism throughout Russia and throughout the world, mostly to basically have him have everything underneath his one banner. And as he basically sees it, he's trying to save the world, but really, in a way, he's just taking over the world. And he was pretty much blinded to that throughout the whole comic until the third volume, which
True.
I am not going to spoil, though, because that is actually something you guys kind of have to experience for yourself when you actually do like pick up a copy of it. So.
I will.
Yes, I will.
I
I am gonna probably buy the comic soon, and also, Tete has ordered the DVD, right? Has it come yet? We're probably
Yes, I
gonna
have
stream
it right
it together.
here.
Yeah.
I
Oh, you have
don't
it already?
Yes, I do. In fact, let me get it real quick here. One sec. Because I have it with all my other DCU stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. We can watch it soon then.
You got it. It came.
Yeah, awesome.
It's hard to find.
Make sure you're prepared to snacks because it is a long movie.
Yeah, it is.
How long is it? Is it 3 hours?
No, wait. How much? It's 84 minutes, which probably, you know what I mean?
1 hour and 24.
Yeah, because compared to, say, other things like you see from these things, usually those things are like an hour or 45 minutes. So this is kind of double the time of your average DC animated thing. At least the ones I've seen. I haven't really delved that much into DC animated stuff aside from mostly exclusively Superman stuff because that's just my favorite out of the whole DC thing. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like a lot of things from DC, but Superman will always be my top fave, and sometimes I only like to see Batman in the context of duking it out with Superman. I like to see two gentlemen of opposing moral inclinations rival and compete and argue with each other. You've probably seen that. You've seen that in my work with Andre and Kirka.
That's true.
I mean, for that you're gonna have to watch the original. For that you're gonna have to watch the Dark Knight Return. The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller.
Oh, so do in that do Superman and Batman duke it out?
Yeah, that's what Batman v Superman is actually loosely based off. I say loosely though because it's pretty much the Dark Knight Returns though because in that comic book though Batman returns as an old man though, but instead of actually trying to do what he can to stop crying though, he's kind of taking like what the other corrupt Superman though by taking the law into his own hands and actually basically breaking the criminals that he fights in the streets. And
wow.
It gets brutal. Like it is not for the faint of heart to watch, or let alone read. It's basically like very condensed and read of like how Batman, like even though he's so old, he still feels like he needs to be Batman.
That's true. Batman will always be Batman.
And it's actually,
I am Batman,
And it's actually split into two parts though, because boy is it long.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. That's another on my reading list. Sounds pretty dark. It sounds like it should be under DC's Black Label almost.
It is. I mean, it's a dark storyline, especially for how they also animated this the almost eight. I think it was eight volumes. Actually,
Holy
how many
moly.
volumes? The Dark
Wow.
Knight Returns.
But yeah, that's me. Yeah, two guys
Mhm.
opposing moral inclinations.
I thought that was Kai and Andre before Kai got defeated, right? He got
No,
kicked out.
no, this is not Kai anymore. It's Kirka and Andre.
How about Joel and Andre?
Joel and Andre? Nah, because Andre loves Joel too much. You know, he thinks of him like his little brother. Let's do everything.
Sam and Joel.
Sam and Joel, that would be funny. I can already wait a minute.
Superman versus
Sam
Batman, but with
wants to be the
Joel and
Batman because it looks cool and he gets a car. And Joel already looks a little bit like Superman, so hey, if they want to cosplay, and Malka
yeah, that would be
make
funny.
the
Oh, that would be
Snyderverse,
really funny
oh,
to have in The Sims.
we need to do that. So Sam's Batman, Joel's Superman, and Malka can be
Lois
Snyderverse.
Lane.
Yes.
Yes. And Sam is a pink Batman. Black and gray.
Pink mobile, right? He's got a pink
Mhm.
mobile carrier jet.
Oh, yep. Oh, found it. No, that took a while.
Oh no, that's
But
okay.
so yeah, so it's a 4-issue. Yeah, so it's a 4-issue comic though, slightly longer than Red Sun, but still pretty good though. Like I highly recommend it.
Mhm.
I'm definitely going to check it out. That's next on my reading list.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and this is only the first episode of our discussions on Red Sun and Superman in general. I think our next episode about Red Sun will take place after you and I watch the movie for the first time. It could be like a reaction to,
It
what
could.
we thought about the movie, after we watched it for
Yeah.
the first time.
I do
Movie night.
I do have one more pressing question because Riza read the comic. I know that he was raised on a collective farm in Ukraine. Is there any mention of the people that raised him, like Earth parents? Like, do we have any Soviet version of Jonathan and Martha Kent, or do we not?
I actually you actually did ask me this before though, but sadly the answer is no, we do not though, because as I mentioned before, he's because he landed on a Ukrainian farm field though, which during that time when Ukraine was falling underneath the influence of Russia during the form of the Soviet Union though, a lot of the villages there are mostly just farm villages, but not by choice, by force though, because
True.
because from what I read about during Russia's revolution though, or the many revolutions it had though, because they actually had
Mhm.
during the influence of the Tsar, they had Ukraine as one of the main countries that are mostly in charge of mostly in charge of farms, because the
Mhm.
soil there is so rich.
Rich
But
is
the main problem, though, was that there was a huge famine going on though, as well,
Mhm.
Holodomor. Yeah.
which killed about, I believe, about 60% of the population though. But during that time, both the Tsar and even Stalin still didn't care. They basically said just keep growing more crops though, and just keep working though.
Yeah, I mean, Southern Russia and Ukraine always getting screwed. That's something Fortunate Games here has seen. I've explored that pretty thoroughly with Andre's story because he's a Cossack from Southern Russia on the Ukraine border. So yeah, he's seen things get definitely screwed, especially not only with like the famine and the forced farming and collectivism, but also the really brutal decossification policies that were brutally enforced right in the height
Mhm.
of the revolution.
Right. So I guess for Jonathan and Martha, like we don't really know who raised him. It's just that he was in the village then, right?
He was just in a village, and he was just helped the farmers though. But when Clark at the time discovered his powers, he was then taken in by Joseph Stalin, who basically took over not too long after Vladimir Lenin fell from power after an illness. But Which the
Mhm.
only time the comic only mentions it is basically he died the same way as he did in real life, and that was just it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's there's not the
Yeah.
you really can't alter too much on Lennon because Lennon's
Lennon was just a psychopath. Lennon was just a psycho, just plain and simple, though.
yeah, exactly. You know, just
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Crazy, crazy, ugly mess, horrifying mess, and
That's very true. Yeah,
yeah,
so this was an amazing episode, and, guys, thank you so much for coming on and having this really great discussion about Superman and Red Sun. I can't wait to read more about, Superman's mythos and definitely dive into the movie with Tete once we start watching it. I'm so pumped for it.
me too. I am so pumped for it too. I also want to see how many cranberries we can find in this. You know, cranberries meaning how many things did they get wrong about Russian culture?
I
Because
know, right?
it's one of my exams is studying Russian culture and the nuances of it because there's different regions, not just northern Moscow. There's the south, which is very
Mhm.
different, you know. So
How
I
many
can't wait.
Cold War stereotypes can they put into?
Exactly. Another cranberry, Cold War stereotype, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, that basically is what any type of media that tries to displays about the Cold War. Like, basically, like Russia and the United States never wants to work to each other, so they basically made a bunch of proxy wars. So,
true.
but
Exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. More pop culture wars. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for coming on again, Riza.
Thank you.
it,
We valued your input and your insight and knowledge. Thank you so much. Thank you for the Rex and thank you for your explanation. It was an honor to have you here and thank you again so much.
no problem, guys, and thank you guys for letting me join this podcast though, because I actually did want to join the podcast as well though, but I wanted like half the time because I'm started working now, but it's
Mhm.
such an honor to be on the podcast for the first time. Thank you guys so much for letting me join on this amazing podcast.
Thank you so much.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.